Hi, I'm Kat. Today I'm going to be taking a astrological snapshot of what we're going to be experiencing through astrological transits through the end of the month and looking more specifically at the individual rising signs and how the new moon is going to be affecting you dependent on your rising sign. So it is important for you to know what your ascendant is in order for this reading to make the most sense for you. But the very beginning of the reading, I'm going to be just talking about some of the astrological transits that we're all experiencing right now. So, dun, 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 dun. Let's take a look. All right, so this is just a little chart that I drew up this morning. And first, I'm just going to take a walk through the different planets and what's going on with them, because we've been experiencing some really big shifts this year, and that is because of what we've been experiencing astrologically. So when we first look at this graph, just to explain what's going on in this diagram, we have 12 different sections of or pieces of the pie, which represent one of 12 different zodiac signs. And within those, you will see little writings regarding the planets and their placements right now. So if you were to, imagine the Earth sitting here in the center, and this is a turning dial, these planets would shift throughout the day as the day shifts, just in perspective to us, but they don't leave their zodiac sign, if that makes sense. Each of these planets do have their own timeline for their orbit in regard to how long they actually move. For instance, how long Mars is in the sign of Aries before it moves into Taurus. Like Mars will take a different amount of time to move around this system than, for instance, Pluto. Pluto takes 248 years to move around this system. Saturn, for instance, takes 29 and a half years. So when they lock into place with each other or create aspects to each other, they create energies that we are all sitting in, which definitely affect not only our personal lives, but also society as a whole. So right now, what we've been experiencing this year, and we had started experiencing it a little bit last year, is this small stellium of really big energies out here in Capricorn. And so in Capricorn, we have currently Jupiter, which is sitting at 23 degrees, and Pluto at 22 degrees. And those two planets being in a very tight conjunction of space is bringing the transformational energies of Pluto with the big benefactory energies of Jupiter. And so there can be big shifts and big transformations right now if someone does have a natal chart aspected in this house or to this conjunction. With that in mind, we also have Saturn sitting in here within just a few degrees of these planets. So while it's not sitting directly on top of it, it's still considered somewhat of a conjunction. And so we've had, Saturn, which is the planet of responsibility, Pluto, which is the planet of transformation, Jupiter, which is this energy that lends this quality that makes things bigger. All of those energies have been sitting in Capricorn's house or in the area of the zodiac system where Capricorn is, which rules social structure, our life path, how society is organized, government, money, institutions, all these things. And that's why we've been experiencing this big shift in this year. Now, what we're going through the end of this month is we see that these planets are making their way towards Aquarius, but they also have a square relationship with Mars, which is sitting in Aries. And Aries is a zodiac sign that is our what motivates us and our sense of self, and this planet has been, Mars has been in retrograde for the last month and a half or so. And so we've had kind of our hands tied in respect to, what we've wanted to do and what we've wanted to go out into the world and, shift, like our own sense of fire within us has kind of been held at bay, and it just moved into stationary direct within the last day. So we're starting to see some movement in this square relationship, which has been in a difficult relationship for the last few months. Simultaneously, we have Venus, which is in opposition and has been, more in direct opposition over the last few days with Mars, and is also sitting in this somewhat square relationship with Jupiter and with Pluto. And keep in mind that Venus is a faster moving planet, so it will be in a tighter square. It will move into a tighter square with these three planets. So what does that mean? That means that, Venus being our planet that represents our relationships and how we interact with people on one-on-one relationships, and intimate relationships, family relationships, all of our relationships that are dear to heart, that is going to be in a square relationship with this energy of Pluto and Jupiter. And so there will be some difficulties that we see, that are the people that are in our close community, that they are experiencing, and some challenges that people are going through. And it begs the question of how do we support that? And I invite people to consider, in this realm of things, that there is this T-square relationship here, which is kind of like, you can either look at it as a seesaw, like a tug of war between Venus and Mars, and then these three big authorities are kind of mediating the situation. Or you can look at it as like, this is a three-legged table that needs some balance to it. And if we're looking at where that would be balanced, you would just follow these broken lines that I drew in here, and it would be in the sign of Cancer. And so Cancer is a sign that relates to our tribe, our family, the people in our immediate connecting like intimate relationships, as far as like who made up the home that we lived in, because Cancer is the sign of the home. And so this is asking us to take our attention over here so that we can bring balance to this situation that seems to have a lot of tension and that seems really unstable. And so if we can bring our energy over here in this direction, then we can be lending our compassionate energies in a useful way. So that's all I'm going to say about that square for right now. Of course, how that's going to be showing up in your life, because Cancer, just by its nature, rules our tribe. And, but when you look at your rising sign, as I go into a bit more here in just a few minutes, your rising sign is going to be moving this dial. So if you have, for instance, a Libra rising sign, Cancer is going to be up here, in your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th house. And so you would be looking towards, relationships and tribe, and, how they're doing in their life work and life path, and, how they're doing overall. So it does shift a bit. If you were Scorpio rising, for instance, that's going to move this Cancer into the 9th house. So you would be looking at, your community, your spiritual community, as well as, any teachers or mentors or people that you teach and mentor, and, your students and see how they're doing. So depending on your rising sign, of course, that's gonna shift this quite a bit as far as where the energetic is showing up in your life personally. Um, but we're going to go into more specifically the new moon in that regard, because there's a lot happening over here in Scorpio, which we haven't discussed yet. So over here in Scorpio, we have the sun, right? It's currently like November 14th, and we are still in the sun sign of Scorpio. And we can see that the sun is over here. And then we also have the moon, which is also moving through this sign, which moon moves pretty quickly, right? And then we have Mercury that just moved into this sign just a couple days ago. And if you look to the opposite of this, forming conjunction over here, because we're going to have, close to an eclipse over here soon in a few days. But there's a opposition to Uranus over here in Taurus. And Uranus is a planet that's all about like epiphanies, big shifts, and it's sitting in a house it's sitting in a zodiac sign of Taurus that's all about our stability and our sense of worth and our values and our money that we have on hand. And so we've been experiencing these big shifts because Uranus moved into Taurus last year in the beginning part of the year, and we've been starting to see these shifts ever since then. But it is in opposition and will be in direct opposition to Mercury here within the next day or so, as well as the moon that it's in opposition to right now. And what that is telling us is that there's going to be, some kind of epiphany, because Mercury is how we see things, how we speak about things, and Uranus has this very spontaneous, kind of out of nowhere energy, and it's known for bringing shifts to areas that have been kind of outworn conditions that prevent in the way of progress. So it shakes things up ultimately, for the better good, is what the esoteric studies say. So we are over the next few days going to be experiencing, possibly a lot of epiphanies, communications, insight in this area of our chart. And especially, right now around the time of the new moon, it's important to consider, that these epiphanies and where you put your attention and how you see the world, quite literally, by the energy of Mercury, is going to be planting a seed, so to speak, of these energies that we're going to be moving toward over the next 6 months, because these are sitting in the house of Scorpio, okay? And so you have to consider that the moon, while it's a really fast moving planet, it's new in a sign only, once a year. And so it's going to be full in Scorpio in about 6 months. And so the seed that we are planting right now is going to be, actualized over the next 6 months' time. And it is in the sign of Scorpio, which is the sign of transformation. And so we're going to be seeing a huge amount of transformation in this area of our chart, dependent on what our rising sign is. So now I'm going to go ahead and take a walk through the different rising signs so that we can talk about, how is this new moon going to be developing in your life over the next 6 months. So first we're going to look at Aries. And so you can see that, for instance, Aries is being greatly affected by Mars, which is sitting in their first house. And if you are someone who has Aries as your rising sign and you want to know how these planets are all affecting you on an individual level, we can discuss that. But we're going to talk about the new moon today and the energetics of the new moon and the transformation that's coming in. And for Aries rising, we are going to see that energy in the 8th house. And so, the 8th house is matters around other people's money, loans, your credit within the system. It also speaks to matters around inheritance, credit cards, and scenarios involving deaths and rebirths. And it's not always matters of physical death, although it could be. It's, like deaths of projects, deaths of creative things that we've put energy towards, because this is, a house of creativity as well. It can also be instigating, transformations in the area of, your partner's money and matters around your partner's monetary situation. There could be some big changes in that area. You could get some epiphanies in that area. There could be some communication in that area. And then there also could be some news or transformation that's starting in your life that is involving either your sexual partners, your use of drugs, as well as, other desirable activities. And the 8th house also speaks to, surgeries, because it rules that very exact surgical way of looking at things that's very precise and cutting, because it's ruled by Scorpio. And so this house also rules surgeries. So there could be, some transformation, some big shift, like some surgery that really shifts your health picture, if you have Aries in the 1st house. Now, if you have Taurus in the 1st house, you're going to see the biggest transformation and the new seed that's planting right now in your 7th house, which is the house of the other, the house of how we balance our life by who we surround ourselves with. And so you could be seeing, and you're basically planting the seed here and new beginnings around matters around your partners, as well as other established relationships that are one-on-one relationships in your inner circle of friends. You may see like your attitude around work and how you put yourself out in the world shift and transform. So how you actually represent yourself in the world, to be seen by other, that could be transforming quite a bit right now. As well as if there is a situation in like a lawsuit or some legal matter that's been kind of in a place of feeling stuck, it could also, this would be the time to plant some seeds around what shifts you want to see happen in that direction. And this is also, a change and transformation energy that's lending to our intimate relationships and how we exchange within those relationships, as well as marriage and long-term relationships, very specifically. So if there is a matter right now that's going on that is, drawing, your heart into different directions, there could be a big shift and movement that happens over the next few days in those one-on-one relationships. And it's important, to take some time and make sure that you take some inward time so that there aren't any big explosions, because this weekend we also do have this opposition between Venus and Mars, which is, which rules relationships overall. So let's go to Gemini rising. So for Gemini rising, they're going to have Scorpio in their 6th house. So that means that they're going to experience a lot of transformation and shifts and new beginnings in the area of their work environment, uh, in relationships with small groups of people. There could also be a new beginning in the area of having pets, because this house rules small animals. Um, it also is a house that rules the place that you actually work in. So there could be some shift and change in that area of your life. And it's where, this house is naturally ruled by Virgo. So it's where we tend to be self-critical and where we analyze ourselves. So this could actually be telling, especially because we have Mercury sitting in this house, which is naturally ruled, which naturally rules over and governs over Virgo, is that this could actually be a big shift and change in how we actually talk to ourselves inwardly, and our inner dialogue, and having a new awareness around that. And, being aware of the fact that how we talk to ourselves inwardly greatly affects how we interact with the outward world and what we attract into our lives. It's also a house that deals with natural ways of maintaining our health. So you may be creating new routines around self-care and preventative health, whether it's you're finally going to start a new routine of taking supplements or doing yoga or dancing in your living room, or going hiking, or some new health routine that brings um, you know a sense of self-care into your life. And then it also deals with self-study. So this may actually be a beginning it by way of actually looking at yourself with a sense of separation and uh, kind of research, rather than looking at yourself so personally. So there's some big shifts happening for people who have Gemini rising, Gemini sun, and Gemini moon, for sure. All right. Well, there's big transformation happening for us all, to be quite honest. So for Cancer rising, Cancer sun, and Cancer moon, but more, specifically for Cancer rising, they're going to be seeing this biggest amount of transformation in their fifth house. I'm sorry. Yeah, in their fifth house. Um, and our fifth house is matters that are around our creativity, and new love affairs as well. And as far as creativity, this could be a time where you decide to finally start a new creative project that's always been dear to your heart, or you get an epiphany, more specifically, around a new creative project that you want to start, that will be completed in about 6 months' time, when this new moon in Scorpio is actualized into its full moon state in April. So you may be getting, new ideas around projects that you actually are going to be starting here shortly, and epiphanies in that way. And they could be, inspired and instigated by this Uranian influence, as well as this conjunction between the Mercury and the moon, which is getting ready to happen. The fifth house is also matters around new love affairs. So, one caution that I do want to say in this respect to those who are really excited about the possibility of having a new love affair, is that right now there is an opposition between Venus and Mars, which can be telling of a really hard and difficult relationship, as well as something that feels kind of extravagant. And so it may be useful to just wait it out a little bit and get to know that person a little bit more, and go slowly before you really start anything there or sign any contracts, because it does have that opposition kind of quality to it. The fifth house also is matters around children. So this could actually, be a time where people are, getting pregnant. Not that they aren't getting pregnant all the time, but, having an idea and setting a routine around making sure the body is taken care of. Um, but this is, for people who have a Cancer rising, who are in a healthy relationship, this actually could be a time period where, you could see some new beginnings in that area of your life. The fifth house is also matters that deal with leadership. And so we could be seeing, a lot of transformation around how we interact with people and how we engage with people from a sense of leadership if you have a Cancer rising. And then you can also see shifts and changes around your own sense of like what drives you. If it's a matter of, honor and integrity, or if it's, a matter of bullying. Like there's a shift behind like what's the best way to rule people and to lead people? Do you rule people or lead people? And that comes in because the fifth house is ruled by Leo, which has that fiery force, which can sometimes be over, you know, what do I want to say? Um, Overzealous, can be overbearing to other people that are in their company. Whereas, leading people from a sense of, doing the right thing, there can be transformation in that area. And then it also deals with matters around your, personality and your evolution of personality. And so there could be this big shift in a sense of self and how you actually go out into the world. And because the fifth house is ruled by the heart, it could be some transformation in that area of how you actually engage with the people around you. And then if we go to look at the Leo rising, which actually can give some more information, the Leo rising puts all this Scorpio energy in the fourth house. And so the fourth house is all about, how we feel about things that are, you know, from our upbringing and how we were raised and our traditions and our family, our tribe. And having Scorpio in this house just by your natal rulership means that, there has been a lot of, I want to say almost like instability. Sometimes Scorpio is associated with, coldness, but there's also a lot of depth. And keep in mind that Scorpio is a water sign, and having it, in the fourth house means that by element, the water of Scorpio and the water of Cancer, which is the natural rulership of the fourth house, have a compatible relationship, but this energetic of having a conjunction in between Mercury and the moon, and especially a new moon, this is some insight into possibly some family history, or into something in the past that has happened that gives you a new sense of compassion for what possibly other people in your family have gone through, and more specifically, possibly your mom, because the fourth house, it does, reference that relationship in our lives, and our family. So there could be some insight, some new ways of looking at things in this area of our life. It also speaks to our home, our physical home, and the house that we live in. And so having this transformation in this area, there could be possibly a change of home, or you get the idea that you now want to change the home in some way or transform the home in some way if you don't want to physically move the home. And it also is speaking to that which is in the emotional depths of a person, what's beneath the surface, right? And So this is, gaining some insight about ourselves, and possibly some way that we can heal ourselves by looking at ourselves in a new light, um, taking the time to nurture ourselves. And this is, also a house that rules motherhood, not only just our relationship with our mom, but actually motherhood if you are a mom. And so this could actually bring some transformation and insight around ways to kind of up level being a mom, and just how you see yourself as a mom, as well as how you interact with your children. So, new beginnings and transformation for everyone. So if you have a Virgo rising, you are like me. I have a Virgo rising. I have a Scorpio sun, and I have a Leo moon. So for me, I have a stellium down here in this house, and so all of this is actually transiting my natal stellium too. Um, so it is important to keep in mind that you have placements of all of these planets when you were born. And so these planets, as they're moving in real time, can aspect those planets and influence things on a whole nother level. Um, so if you are Virgo rising, don't necessarily have to be Scorpio sun, right? You can have a sun sign in any of the zodiac signs and be a Virgo rising. But if you have a Virgo rising, you will still have Scorpio in the third house, which is the house that is how we think about things, how we speak about things, how we communicate about things with other people, um, and how we engage in the world in that way. Uh, in this house with Scorpio in here, we have a whole lot of transformation in those areas of our lives. There's transformation on a very deep level where there's really no looking back in regard to, possibly some insightful communications that we have, some uh, and the reason why I say that is because it is, remember, in opposition to this Uranus energy, which is uh, a spontaneous, kind of out of nowhere, lightning kind of force that brings change into situations. So there could be some communications happening this week that come in and that, you know, bring some big shifts to some old situations that we haven't been able to move past. It can also bring about transformations in, our education and how we see things and understand things in our world. It also matters around our siblings. So we could be getting some information about our siblings. It's also a good time to reach out to siblings and see how they're doing, because they are likely going through a lot of change and transformation right now. It's also our second circle of family, like our chosen family. Um, and so this is, you know, the people that we surround ourselves by, we may be seeing that there is going to be some big shifts in this area. Um, and and we are gaining insight over that this weekend, just based on, who is showing up in our lives and who's showing up in the world. And I say that again because of this energy of where Cancer is, and it's sitting up in the 11th house. And so, there are a lot of changes right now. This is a good time to reach out to your friends, interact with your friends, and just, see how you can be of service to them during these great big shifts of change. Um, and this is also a big transformation around, how you put yourself out in the world, how you promote yourself, and how you understand language, words, and the rational mind in general, because that's what this house governs. So there could be a great epiphany in just how you see the world and the shifts that are happening right now in the world. All right, so now we're going to get over to Libra rising. And so if you are a Libra rising, you have Scorpio in the second house. And so you're experiencing a lot of transformation right now in your area of money and resources. There are some new beginnings right now that are starting that could greatly shift your life in the next 6 months. It's also big shifts and changes to your possessions and how you value the things that you have and the cash that you have on hand. Your personal situation around money and your belief system is going to be greatly transformed over the course of the next 6 months. And so it's important for you to, lay the seeds right now, both verbally, energetically, and really put your attention towards what you want to create rather than what you are lacking, if that is the case. This house also matters around stability, as well as what we grasp at and what we're inflexible about. So there's going to be a lot of transformation and shifts in those areas as well. There may be a new sense of like what actually is important to you, what you value, and what you used to value may be very different than what you value now, just based on what has happened. And that could also be greatly shifting over the next 6 months. So where you put your energy, I would suggest, with being in, ultimately where you want to direct your life at, and have some compassion with yourself in that way, and realize that, if you look back at your life and what you've already gone through and achieved, there's always been things that are constantly shifting. So you can't get worked up in your valuation of yourself in regard to things that you don't have any control over. So it also matters around our physical body. So you may gain some insight around some kind of movement or some kind of practice that you want to do with the physical body, that you start now, that you'll see a great transformation come from in about 6 months of work, because nothing happens overnight. So now we're going to look at those who are Scorpio rising. If you're Scorpio rising and you have all of this energy sitting in your first house, keep in mind that your whole idea of self, and your sense of self and what motivates you is transforming right now. And it's kind of always been in this area of transformation and shift because you have Scorpio sitting in your first house. But having that energy in your first house means that, there's always been a depth to you, a deep emotional nature, and an understanding that's really driven how you go out into life. And so I would suspect that there's going to be some epiphany that comes through over these next few days, that really is going to give you a sense of direction and aim, and where you want to anchor yourself over the next 6 months. That's going to be creating a big change in how you see yourself, how you go out into the world. It's kind of like if we consider the time of year right now, there's definitely an energetic of, perennials and trees are drawing all of their energy inward into their root system so they can survive the cold of winter. And there's definitely that energetic here where there's this very deep inward transformation that's happening, that you are going to be bursting forth out of, kind of like the butterfly when it bursts forth out of its cocoon in April. There's like this 6-month kind of incubation process that by by April's time, you know, there could be kind of a whole different sense of self and transformation of your own sense of self and how you are and how you interact with the world itself. So there's some big transformation going on for you, and there's those epiphanies are happening right now, you know, through your reflection and how you are in the world, how you want to interact in the world, and ultimately who you interact with and who's healthy for you to interact with and how they influence you and how you are in the world. So now we're going to look at Sagittarius. So if you're a Sagittarius rising, you have all this Scorpio energy in your 12th house. Now, our 12th house is the new work that is coming down the line, because the 12th house is the last house before it starts all over again. So Pisces, you know, and this house which rules Pisces is considered the closest to God because it's evolved through all of these different signs, and then it's about to be born again. So this house speaks to that. It refers to that new work that's coming and that's emerging. So there's going to be some epiphanies coming in for these folks this weekend around, you know, what they are going to be doing next energetically with their time and their energy. And ultimately, it's also whenever we begin a new work, there's also something we have to let go of as well. So there's something that's going to be, you know, an epiphany around kind of what has to dissolve so that energy can be lent towards what this new creation is going to be. It also is looking at you know, areas that we need to bring closure to in our lives and skeletons in our own closet. This can be, it's often considered the house of undoing because of that, because it's like those things that we don't even want to look at in ourselves. And our escapist tendencies. So, like, where we kind of avoid looking at things that we don't want to see in ourselves. And so, this is you know, this tells us there's going to be some sort of epiphany or almost like an enlightenment that's going to be coming through in these next few days for these individuals because of, you know, the new moon that's happening, which is a new beginning, which is going to be insight around these new projects that are going to be coming down the road, as well as epiphanies around possibly some behaviors and escapist tendencies that they didn't really want to see, but now they really have to face it because of some situation that they really weren't willing to look at before, but just because of whatever circumstances this weekend, they are called to look at that, and it brings about this big shift that is going to really affect their lives, you know, over the next 6 months. And you know, and honestly, I think it's a good shift because it's got this, you know, it's going to have this trine relationship with Neptune, which Neptune is the planet of like our illusions. And so to be able to kind of see through our illusions of ourself and be able to work with that, that's something that Sagittarius rising are also going to be working with. And then also the spiritual aspect of this house is that, you know, having these energies here with Mercury, which is, you know, being aspected by Uranus, which is a higher level of Mercury, these individuals with the Sagittarius rising could experience some epiphany on a profound level over these next few days because of this insight that's coming in that will greatly, you know, it will give them very strong direction in areas that they have possibly felt lost in. And what's interesting about that is that Neptune has been in retrograde for a while, and it is actually going to be stationing direct by the end of November. And so this kind of, if you imagine someone that's kind of been stuck in this place of I mean, inner dialogue where they've been kind of caught up in some illusion and they couldn't see through it and it was some riddle they couldn't figure out. It's as if this riddle will be able to be figured out. And it may, you know, deal with family as well, um, as relationships. But Sagittarius rising are, you know, they can expect some kind of epiphany and insight in that area. It sounds exciting for those individuals. Um, so people who are, you know, Capricorn rising, oh man, I sympathize with you because this has probably been a huge year of transformation in regards to how you see yourself out in the world and what's been motivating you out in the world, simply because you've had these three huge planets sitting in your first house. Um, so lots of big shifts have likely happened for you this year in that regard. But when we're looking at the new moon, because that's what we're looking at right now for you, and where this transformation is happening, there's definitely a new sense of detachment around what's important and what's not important to you, because you have all of this energy sitting in the 11th house. And the 11th house is, you know, what we need to let go of. So having some idea around something that isn't serving you anymore, is no longer useful for you anymore, you'll be getting some really strong insight around that. You'll also likely be seeing a good deal of transformation, and insight in seeing, you know, like what is passing away and what is no longer useful for you, and having a sense of detachment around it, kind of like you've had a shift in your sense of values this year and your sense of self, and so where you where you feel detachment around things has shifted, and is likely going to be transformed in the next 6 months. This area of the chart also rules, you know, our big picture and our long range dreams, um, our ideals, our hopes, our wishes. It also matters relating to our friendships. And so this can be a huge transformation in who your friend group is, and seeing clearly, you know, possibly through a veil of people who maybe weren't your friends that you've had long relationships with that now you're ready to let go of. Because, you know, there is kind of this insight aspect to this. It could also be that you realize that you have more friends than you ever realized that you did because of some insight and some exchange and communication that comes through. So your friend group could actually be changing and, you know, likely expanding or shifting, transforming in some way. And you could see in the next, you could see that shift just starting to happen now and be completely transformed over the next 6 months' time. Uh, this is also, you know, the big picture, like how we see things. So perhaps there has been a way of seeing the world in such a way that, you know, the perspective was really focused on certain things, and now your perspective is greatly shifting, and how you see the big picture is shifting and transforming, so that you feel different inside of the world than perhaps you have. Um, you know, granted, you have all this change happening in your first house too, and, you know, there's some matters around the home that are beginning to shift as well. But ultimately, you know, it feels like there's some kind of creative pursuit or something, um, and that possibly this situation and big shift towards yourself is starting to get you to see that you have a lot more capabilities than you ever realized, and that you also have more friends and support system than you actually ever realized as well. So if you have a Aquarius rising, that places this Scorpio energy up in your 10th house. And so the 10th house is matters around your overall career. And so you could see the beginning in a shift and growth towards a new direction in your career, or actually a new career itself, new like your life path and where you saw in yourself going in your life path, you could be getting an epiphany around that new direction and where you want to forge um, over the next couple days because of this, big shift that's happening. It could also be related to a situation around your home, and that it's changing what you want to do with your life, because you're starting to gain this new insight around different things that you actually value. Um, the 10th house is also like where we assume responsibility for our lives and where we assume accountability. So there could be some change in how you go out in the world because of the importance of where you feel like you need to come from. Like, you know, uh, standing up in the world because you feel like it's important, and like a new sense of leadership and feeling that possibly you need to be in this role. And that could be, a new path for you to forge ahead because you have to, do new things to actually get there. But there's some new beginning in that area that's starting right now that will be actualized in the next 6 months. Um, so it's also dealing with matters around your connections with your father, right? Because the fourth house rules the mother, the 10th house rules the father. And so there could be some insight and exchange and communication that comes in from your father, or that influences your relationship with your father. It also would be a great time to reach out to your father and see how he's doing, because you have that mercurial energy, which is communication, um, the moon, which is in new beginning. So there could also be new communications that start with your father at this time, and new connections that are made um, based on what's been going on with you in your life. If you are Aquarius rising, you also could be experiencing a transformation on the level of your own inner work with yourself, um, like your own sense of responsibility towards yourself and accountability towards yourself and what you want your life to look like, and getting an insight into that so that you can start to visualize what that looks like and what that's going to feel like so that it can come into form over the next 6 months. It's very important. And finally, the Pisces rising. So for people who are Pisces rising, that places the Scorpio energy in the 9th house. And the 9th house is matters that are around, travel, big business. There could be, uh, big shifts or insights that come in those places. There could also be big changes to those big plans. So if you had, a trip planned, or big plans for a trip that possibly was overseas, you may see some shifts happening with that, that are kind of out of your control, and that may not be able to be done for a little bit of time. You can also see some transformation around large lawsuits. So if you're dealing with a large lawsuit, you could be getting some insight into something that could really change that lawsuit in your favor, or some kind of big shift to the direction that that is going in. This is also matters around higher education and deeper learning. So there could be some epiphanies and insight that come to you in regard to a greater understanding of some spiritual riddle or idea, as well as maybe the ability to talk about it as well, because you have that mercurial force there. There also could be some insight and epiphany around maybe now you finally know what you want to go and study and where you want to put your energy and effort. And so this would be a new beginning to actually move towards that, so that it's some kind of certificate that you can actually attain, and work on through the winter, or some study that you can put your time and energy toward um, throughout the winter, because it is a new moon right now and it would be actualized and manifested in the next 6 months. We also have epiphanies around ideas, philosophies, and the expansion of our own consciousness, as well as, work with teachers. So there could be an exchange that comes in through by way of your mentor, or something that you offer someone else in this way, if you are a teacher, that lends people an understanding by your insight, that is really transformational and profound. This can also be where our spiritual search begins. So having, an epiphany by way of a new way of looking at things, a new way of seeing things, that really is transformational in how you are inwardly with yourself and how you also interact with others, just in how you actually see the world, and visualize the world and visualize life and your journey, because this is a spiritual house. So that can be greatly shifted and transformed, um, starting right now, basically, uh, because we have this new moon in Scorpio. So those are our, that's me walking through the different astrological houses. Um, so if you know what, let's see, that's weird. So if you know what your rising sign is, you can go to the section where I talk about your rising sign and know where that transformation is going to be happening in your life over the next 6 months. And then simultaneously, in the beginning of the video, I did speak about where all the planets are right now, but if you would like to know where they are affecting your natal placements of the different planetary bodies, feel free to reach out. I am offering a 20% off discount right now for all astrological and tarot readings that are scheduled through the month of November. And you can reach out to me through rootsofalchemy@gmail.com. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and give the tarot reading for today. So if you're interested in seeing that, check out my YouTube. It will be up there. If you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. I look forward to connecting with you, and I send you a good wish. Blessings to you.